Hello, I'm Neve Barker. This is Al Jazeera live from Doha. The top stories this hour. Israeli settlers raid a village near Nablus in the occupied West Bank. 4 Palestinians and 2 Israelis are shot dead. The United States again targets Iran with airstrikes, while Kuwait says it's currently engaging hostile drone attacks following Iranian aggression. We report from southern Lebanon, where displaced families are returning to their homes after the withdrawal of Israeli troops. Europe's heatwave turns up the economic pressure on businesses across the continent. And in sport, one of the biggest names in football management's got a new job. Jurgen Klopp has been named Germany's head coach. Good to have you. At least 4 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli fire near Nablus in the occupied West Bank. They were members of the same family, 2 brothers and 2 cousins. Palestinian authorities say a group of about 20 Israeli settlers attacked the village of Tel, shooting at people and their homes. Witnesses say another 4 people were injured in the raid. At least 2 Israelis were killed. The Israeli military has ordered the deployment of more troops to the area. Meanwhile, other Israeli settler attacks were also reported in the nearby villages of Farata and Imatin. At least 8 Palestinians were injured. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says a range of measures will be implemented after the attacks. He's announced intensified military operations and the deployment of more Israeli troops across the occupied West Bank. Ida Ibrahim has the latest from Nablus in the occupied West Bank.
Well, locals are trying to refute the Israeli army's narrative, which since the morning has been trying to portray the people who have raided the village of Tel as hikers. And they're saying that they came in armed, they raided the village with the intention to commit an attack against Palestinians in the area. When the Palestinians tried to defend themselves, an altercation was ensued between the Palestinians and the settlers, leading more and more Israeli soldiers to come into the area. Now, what happened is, as we can see from one of the videos, is a Palestinian was trying to take the weapon of one of the Israelis. And then we've seen the Israeli forces and settlers shoot in a very random way, which is why Palestinians are saying that the bullet might have come from the Israeli army themselves. But we are also talking about 4 Palestinians who have been killed, whose only fault is trying to defend their own village from these growing settler attacks. Now, the Israeli retaliation has been very swift, very in nature of how Israel deals with Palestinians in that scenario, which is collective punishment, closing off all roads, imposing more and more checkpoints. But not only that, the Israeli forces have just raided a hospital inside Nablus, where some of the wounded people have been getting treatment after the incident this morning. All of that comes as the Israeli government says that it wants to launch a major assault against Nablus to try and limit what they call Palestinian terrorism.
Let's speak to Gideon Levy. He's a columnist at Haaretz, an Israeli newspaper. He's in Tel Aviv. Good to have you, Gideon. So we, judging by what we've just heard there from Nida Ibrahim, are anticipating a major response from the Israeli government. Following these recent deadly clashes around Nablus and the growing reports of settlers acting in tandem with military forces, Gideon, how much of this surge in settler violence is now, in your view, fully integrated as part of official state strategy rather than just fringe violence?
Nothing is fringe. Everything is coordinating, orchestrated, supported and financed, and above all, defended by the Israeli army, by the Israeli government. And we shouldn't see it as some kind of initiative of individuals. It is Israel's policy to try to tyrannize the Palestinians and to try to kick them away from their fields, to frighten them, to use terror against them, village after village, week after week. Those things are happening on a daily basis. The only really open question is, do the Palestinians have any right for self-defense? Because what happened today is clearly self-defense of the Palestinians, and now they are going to pay a hell of a price for trying to defend themselves.
We know Prime Minister Netanyahu, Defence Minister Israel Katz, they've ordered a wide-scale military operation across West Bank villages in response. From your perspective, is this genuinely security management? Those are the kind of words used? Or is it a tactical political move to appease Netanyahu's far-right coalition partners?
I guess you know the answer. It has nothing to do with security, because if it's about the security, they should take now a very wide range operation against the real terrorists in the West Bank, namely the Jewish terrorists. If they want really security and some kind of stability, they have to take a wide-scale operation against those hundreds and hundreds of violent settlers who are doing it now for months and months without being brought to justice, without anyone stopping them. So obviously it's all political. We are in elections times. Netanyahu wants to show that he is going with the most extreme fascist in his government. And the Palestinians, as usual, are paying the price.
What other options are there, Gideon? Because we've got, as you say, national elections approaching at the end of October. How is this current rhetoric around going in hard on the West Bank, how is that playing to the domestic Israeli electorate? And also, Gideon, I mean, does the mainstream political opposition offer any real alternative to the occupation?
We were just facing really horrifying messages by the opposition. There is no difference. After what happened today in those villages, when you read the reactions of the leaders of the most so-called Zionist left parties like the Democrats, there's no difference between them and the reactions of Netanyahu and even Ben-Gvir. They're all the same. And this is so depressing because you don't see a real opposition, you don't see any alternative for the government's policy when it comes to the occupation, when it comes to maintaining the occupation. And the media in Israel, as usual, is recruiting itself and framing the whole event as a terror act against the settlers. I mean, can you believe this? And the Israelis are getting it as another terror action against innocent, holy settlers who just wanted to hike in the area.
So if there is no diversity of political views and opinion, if Israeli society seems geared towards punitive action against the Palestinians in their occupied territory, please explain to us, Gideon, what's going on now in Gaza. I mean, despite the nominal ceasefire, the reports of daily casualties and ongoing military operations persisting, I mean, what does the gap between the official diplomatic narrative and the reality on the ground tell us about the longevity of any peace agreement?
It's good you break it up because you bring it up because the world seems to forget what's going on in Gaza. In the recent weeks or months, every day, at least once a day, there is a child being killed in Gaza. Whole families were exterminated in the last days, and it seems that nobody cares about what's going on in Gaza. At the same time, no rehabilitation started. All those big ideas and really big promises about the Peace Council and all those ridiculous organs who are supposed to make Gaza a safe place and a prospering one are doing nothing. Israel is trying to stop any kind of initiative. Israel doesn't want any rule in Gaza. Not Hamas, not the PA, not international rule, nothing, just to keep them in their position now and to break the society in Gaza. And we see that nobody is there to stop Israel.
Gideon Levy, many thanks for joining us on Al Jazeera. Gideon Levy of Haaretz there. Now, Kuwait's army says its air defence system is currently intercepting what it calls hostile drone attacks. This is as Iran launched another wave of strikes against US assets in the region. Bahrain and Jordan have also been targeted. Earlier, Iran said it's launched projectiles towards the Ali al-Salam air base in Kuwait, which is used by American forces. Bahrain's condemned what it's described as systematic aggression by Iran. On Thursday, Kuwait reported multiple strikes at its main border crossing with Iraq. Drones hit the Abdali crossing, causing damage there. There are no reports of casualties. In a moment, we'll speak to Mike Hanna at the White House. But first, let's speak to Victoria Gatenby in Doha. Victoria, we've had those coordinated Iranian retaliatory strikes targeting US installations in Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan. What are local authorities reporting in the wake of these attacks?
Well, Niamh, those attacks are still ongoing. Kuwait's air defences are currently dealing with a drone attack, they say, and that comes just hours after Bahrain said that its Ministry of Defence was having to intercept a number of aerial attacks. Now, over the course of the last 12 hours or so, the IRGC has released a statement saying that it has targeted the Sheikh Issa airbase, that's in Bahrain. They say they've targeted fuel storage tanks, hangars containing military equipment, as well as what they describe as the living quarters of US personnel. Now, that hasn't been confirmed by the US or Bahrain, but in Jordan, the Azraq air base has been attacked, and also in Kuwait, the Ali Al Salam air base. That is a major air base for US personnel in Kuwait, although it's not confirmed at the moment how many personnel remain there now. Mainly, we have seen, I would say, US military assets across those three countries being targeted on Friday. But Bahrain has just released a statement in the last couple of hours accusing Iran once again of targeting civilians.
Given all this continued pressure on these GCC countries, I mean, how are Gulf leaderships shifting their defensive posture? Is there a consensus emerging, Victoria, within the GCC on whether to maintain calls for diplomatic de-escalation or pivot towards something else, something resembling more collective deterrence?
I think there is a consensus among GCC countries and Jordan that they do need stronger collective deterrence. By that, they mean stronger air and missile defences, better intelligence sharing and sort of closer military coordination. But that is not crucially replacing diplomacy. Now, the GCC released a statement in which they said they reaffirm their right to self-defence under Article 51 of the UN Charter. That is not a change in position. That is something they have been saying throughout this conflict, which started in February. They continue to adopt a defensive posture, not an offensive one, because they say there is no military solution to this conflict. They cannot change the geography of this region. They say Iran will always be their neighbour. So what they see as their long-term interests is de-escalation and dialogue and some kind of negotiated settlement to this crisis.
Victoria, many thanks for the update. Al Jazeera's Victoria Gatenby here in Doha. Now, the US military says it's conducted another round of strikes against Iran. Explosions were reported in at least half a dozen cities, including Bandar Abbas and Avaz, where at least 4 people were killed. Well, US Central Command says the strikes are aimed at further degrading Iran's military capabilities, with their targets including command centres and drone storage facilities. Tehran's vowed to respond to any attacks launched against its territory. And there have also been US strikes on Qeshm Island, which holds a strategic position in the Strait of Hormuz. Locals there say they've seen fighter jets flying over the island's southern shores. Versal Serdas following developments from Tehran.
For 13 consecutive days, the United States continued attacking targets across Iran. On Friday, 9 provinces were targeted. Hormuzgan province, Qeshm Island and Bandar Abbas. Qeshm Island is the largest island in the entire Gulf, and Bandar Abbas is Iran's largest port. In Khuzestan province, which is regarded as the heart of Iran's oil industry, so there have been attacks, and officials are saying that 4 people have been killed by these attacks. Then Konarak port, which is another logistically important port of Iran in Sistan, Balochistan, also was attacked. But the United States is now expanding its operations to inner land and also to the north and west of the country. Markazi province, Lorestan province, Yazd province, Isfahan province, Fars province, Western Azerbaijan province, and Gilan province in the north of the country, they all have been attacked on Friday. So when we look at the pattern, we're seeing that the United States is clearly going after the civilian infrastructure, but also the commercial hubs as well. And among them, the ports are the primary targets. So Bandar Abbas, Konarak, Chabahar, Sirik, Mahshar, Imam Khomeini, Bushehr, Jask, Bandar Lenge, and Bandar Khamir. These are important ports, and these are the economic lifelines of Iran, so they have been attacked several times. But for the first time since the beginning of the war, the United States has attacked the Anzali port at the coast of Caspian Sea. This is the largest Iranian port in the north of the country. That was also attacked by the United States. So when we look at the pattern, we understand that the United States on one hand is trying to degrade the capabilities of the IRGC, but also by attacking these economic lifelines of Iran, they're trying to cripple Iran's economy. Rasul Sardar, Al Jazeera, Tehran.
Well, Iran's responded to threats from US President Donald Trump, who's warned that seized Iranian assets could be used to compensate for damage to ships in the Strait of Hormuz. In a post on social media, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said seizing another nation's assets to pay for unrelated future claims is an incendiary precedent. Those who celebrate or profit from such funds should remember, once governments normalise confiscation, no one's assets are safe. Araghchi adds that the ensuing chaos will not be pretty or peaceful. Mike Hanna joins us live from the White House. Mike, a warning from Abbas Araghchi, it will neither be pretty or peaceful to do what Donald Trump is threatening. Some pretty dire warnings from Trump in the past few days, but are we seeing any real signs this could and is about to escalate?
Well, we've had those words from Donald Trump to U.S. media saying that there could be action against Iran far stronger than there has been to this point, saying, though, adding that he's still to make a decision on that. What we have been seeing are reports of more air flight refuelers going into Israel, a southern base in Israel. We're also hearing reports of B-1 bombers deploying from their landing sites in the United Kingdom, as well as added staff going to Ramstein Medical Base. Now, these may just be coincidence, but it certainly does appear to be a degree of mobilization going on. Perhaps the military wants to be in place when President Trump takes a decision, or should President Trump take a decision. But on the other hand, we have members of the Trump administration saying that the pathway to dialogue is still open, that there are still exchanges of messages with whom it isn't made clear. But you do have this complete dichotomy, threatening an upsurge in violence on the one hand, saying that the doors are open to talk on the other.
Mike, many thanks. Al Jazeera's Mike Hanna at the White House there. Let's speak to Ali Fatollah Najad. He's the director of the Centre for Middle East and Global Order, and he's also an analyst focusing on Iranian affairs. Good to have you on the programme, Dr. Fatollah Najad. I mean, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, says Tehran wants a deal, but it isn't serious about making real concessions, says Rubio. I mean, from your analysis, is Tehran genuinely probing for a diplomatic off-ramp here, or is there a priority to continue using all of these maritime disruptions to try and force a better deal from Trump?
Well, I think that there is little evidence that the Islamic Republic is ready to give the kind of concessions that can be satisfying the United States side, be it on the nuclear issue or even on the Strait of Hormuz. There is an increasing strategic understanding in Tehran about the very importance of controlling and being able to disrupt the Strait of Hormuz in order to change also the mid and long-term calculation of the United States to re-engage in a full-fledged war against the Islamic Republic that could be destabilizing. So this is the overall aim. But within the coherence of the Iranian regime and this strategy that I just outlined, there are also divisions about the different risks and about the different tactics within this strategy. So this line is indeed still confrontational. That is the Iranian strategy of confrontation.
Just to reiterate, when you say divisions within the Iranian camp, what are we talking about? What sort of rival groups and positions are at play there in Iran?
Well, first of all, we find ourselves in Iran in very uncertain territory in the wake of the killing of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, who has been dictating the fate of Iranian domestic politics and foreign policy for almost 4 decades. So within this kind of power vacuum, because after all, his son, who is the theoretical successor, has not been seen or heard, there is a jockeying for political power and the distribution of this political power in a future Iran, broadly speaking, about two hardline camps, one of them being the hardline pragmatists that are actually interested in some kind of a diplomatic settlement with the United States or accommodation that could translate Iranian battlefield or military victories onto the negotiation table and make it more permanent. But there is also the rivaling ultra-hardline camp that is very much criticizing those very figures who are engaged in diplomacy with the United States, and because there is a lack of trust vis-a-vis them, and there are also differences in ideological, political, and economic interests between the two sides. Ideologically speaking, the enemy of the United States should still be there, so one cannot engage in peace with this kind of enemy that is a pillar, after all, of regime survival. And also economically speaking, there are differences because from one part of the Iranian establishment, there is the fear that, for instance, the MOU was a Trojan horse for a diplomatic and economic opening between Iran and the United States that could ultimately destabilize regime stability.
So there may be divisions within inside Iran, but you're saying that the overarching collective narrative is that the United States is obviously the clear-cut enemy here. And the new blockage on the Red Sea and the Strait of Hormuz transit routes, I mean, they're already pushing up oil prices. We've got the figures on the screen now, $96.89 a barrel for Brent crude. It's hovering around $100 at the moment. The global economic pressure is clear for anyone to see, but for the leadership in Tehran that views this conflict through a lens of absolute survival, I mean, does all this international economic pain actually carry any weight on their decision-making? Do they care?
It's a very good question, because those two camps that I just delineated, they assign different weight on the notion of economic urgency. The pragmatist heartland camp thinks that an accommodation could be destabilizing, not least economically speaking, whereas the other camp, the ultra-hardline camp, is quite oblivious and thinks that, at least in the short term, it has enough financial and economic stamina to go along. One of the things that we have to look at is the facts of the U.S. naval blockade on Iranian ports, if this is going to lead to the same kind of collapse of Iranian oil revenues, and also the role of China here. But the very fact that Iran has decided to consider reactivating the Houthi card, so to speak, in order to disrupt the Bab el-Mandab Strait, is also a reflection of the frustration that exists within Tehran about the lack of success of disrupting the Strait of Hormuz in order to gain what it wants, that is a recalculation of U.S. policy, and also that the Arab states of the Persian Gulf also reconsider their strategic approach.
Ali, it's been really good to hear your thoughts on all of this. Ali Fatollah Nejad, Director of the Centre for Middle East and Global Order. Pleasure, thank you. Now, people displaced from one of three so-called pilot zones in southern Lebanon are being allowed back into the town for the first time. The Lebanese army entered Zalta al-Gharbia on Tuesday. The pilot zones are part of a US brokered agreement between Israel and Lebanon that will see the withdrawal of Israeli troops. It also calls for Hezbollah to disarm. Israeli forces are occupying a swathe of territory along the border in Lebanon, displacing hundreds of thousands of people.
We're determined not to enter the village unless the media is present because of the vital role it plays in our lives in conveying our suffering in the village of Zavtar, especially given the scale of devastation there. We know that there is hell and destruction, yet we remain determined.
Zaina Hoda has more from southern Lebanon.
The people of Zawtar al-Gharbi have been waiting for hours, a long line of cars. They just want to be able to return to their homes, but the Lebanese army is only allowing small batches to return at a time. Why? Because of the wide-scale destruction. Officers are telling us that there are many areas in the town, many neighborhoods that are just inaccessible because roads are blocked because of rubble, and there's also still a lot of landmines. The Lebanese army has been carrying out sweeping operations since Tuesday, when the Israeli military withdrew from this town, a town which is part of the pilot zone project, the so-called pilot zone project, where the Lebanese army is to deploy and clear the area from Hezbollah's military assets and prevent Hezbollah from returning to the town. But people are growing increasingly frustrated. They just want to be able to see their homes, even though most of them will tell you that they know their homes are no longer standing, either due to Israeli airstrikes, shelling, and Israel, the Israeli military deliberately detonated a lot of homes in this town, like it's been doing across southern Lebanon. So people wait to return. Journalists, too, are not being given access for the time being to the town. So a lot of frustration, and while the government celebrates this deal or this step as the beginning of Israel's withdrawal from southern Lebanon, the people in the south believe otherwise. They think that this is going to be a long process, and Israel is going to be calling the shots, and there will not be another withdrawal from another town unless Israel decides that the Lebanese army did its job by clearing the area from Hezbollah. Zana Khuder, Al Jazeera, Zawtar al-Gharbi, southern Lebanon.
International Criminal Court members are voting on whether to dismiss the court's chief prosecutor. Karim Khan has been accused of sexual misconduct by a junior ICC colleague. Khan was elected as chief prosecutor at the ICC in February 2021. He led investigations into multiple conflicts, and they include an investigation into alleged war crimes committed by Israel in Gaza. In 2024, his team issued arrest warrants for Israeli leaders, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In response, the US imposed sanctions on Khan and other ICC officials. Khan has argued the sexual misconduct case against him is politically motivated. Kristen Salumi joins us live from the United Nations headquarters in New York, where the vote is taking place. Kristen, so the ICC member states are voting on the future of Karim Khan. I mean, what is the process exactly?
So the 125 nations who make up the ICC's oversight body, which is known as the Assembly of States Parties, are holding this special closed-door session to decide his fate. It would take a majority of these nations to support a resolution to oust him. As you noted, Karim Khan has denied any guilt, but he was suspended earlier this month after an internal investigation that has dragged on now for 2 years. His lawyers have said it's not fair for him to not be present for this discussion. It's not here because of the U.S. Sanctions against him. They won't allow him to come to the country. It is important to point out, however, that the United States cannot vote in this meeting because they are not a member of the ICC. So while they have been very vocal about Karim Khan, they are technically not a member of the court and therefore have no say officially in what happens in this meeting.
And Kirsten, walk us through the evidence actually against Karim Khan. What's required for a decision there?
Well, a panel of experts reportedly initially looked into this and found that while there was some evidence of, quote, non-consensual sexual contact between Karim Khan and a subordinate staff member at the ICC, there was not enough evidence, this panel found, to suspend him based on guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. They couldn't say beyond a reasonable doubt that he was guilty of these charges. But he was suspended after another panel, a 21-member executive body, did its own investigation. And no doubt that panel's results will be presented to the member states who are gathered here today. At the same time, we've got complaints coming from Palestinian groups who have echoed Karim Khan's concerns that this is politically motivated. They've complained about interference in the investigation. But at the same time, we're also hearing from member states who are worried about this case hanging over the ICC and casting a shadow over the work that it is doing. So he could be removed, not based on guilt or innocence, but simply based on the fact that he is not able to do his job effectively.
OK, understood. Many thanks for that. Kristen Salimi at the UN. Still ahead on Al Jazeera. Ukraine targets Russia's biggest online retailer once more, sending plumes of smoke into the skies of St. Petersburg.
How can there be such a fundamental discrepancy on such a core issue?
Each side will stick to the deal only as long as it benefits that side.
This war did start in the middle of negotiations.
They need to agree on principles.
President Trump wants this to end. That's going to be very hard.
The top 1% is benefiting. The question is, who might have had some insider information?
Upfront tackles the big issues on Al Jazeera.
Every year, children prepare to return to school, but some of them are still waiting for a school bag that carries their dreams. Since 2017, Hands for Charity has been supporting children in their education. Across 15 countries, we provide them with essential school supplies. Going back to school is not just the beginning of a new academic year, but a path toward a brighter future. Donate now to the School Bag Project.
You're watching Al Jazeera. Here's a reminder of our top stories this hour. At least 4 Palestinians and 2 Israelis have been killed in the latest Israeli settler attack on the village of Tel in the occupied West Bank. The Israeli military has ordered the deployment of more troops to the area. The US military says it's conducted another round of strikes against Iran. Explosions have been reported in at least half a dozen cities, and at least 4 people have been killed. Kuwait's army says its air defense system is intercepting what it calls hostile drone attacks. This as Iran launched another wave of strikes against US assets in the region. Bahrain and Jordan have also been targeted. A Ukrainian missile strike on the Russian city of Kirov has killed at least 6 people. 26 others were injured in the attack, which happened more than 1,000 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. The regional governor says the strike hit a factory and triggered a fire. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the target was a military facility that makes parts for aircraft and missile systems. Ukraine's also launched a wave of drone attacks on the Russian city of St. Petersburg. A massive plume of smoke was seen rising from a warehouse belonging to Russia's largest online retailer, Wildberries. Russia separately launched a series of rockets at Kiev. Dmitry Medvedenko has this from Moscow.
In Kirov, the local governor of the Kirov region has said 6 people were killed, 26 injured and taken to hospital as a local facility, industrial facility, was hit. He did not specify if this was a military facility, but did give a warning to the local population not to talk about targets or post about targets or post pictures of the result of Ukrainian strikes, as it is against the law. But from Ukraine's President Zelensky's message on social media, he said that Ukraine struck a military industrial complex facility which is making components, as you said, for aviation and for missiles. So this also comes amid an increase of non-military targets as Russia rejects Ukrainian claims that Wildberries warehouses are being used to actually supply the military with components that are under sanctions. So the Wildberries is the top online retailer in Russia. It's been hit at least 7 times in the past week, with at least 8 people killed on Saturday in one of those biggest attacks. The central bank governor of the country, Elvira Nabiullina, has been commenting actually on those strikes, saying that they are creating supply shocks, but no additional aid measures are going to be offered to insurance companies in light of this situation. She said that, you know, insurance companies are pretty capable of regulating this situation. But there was also comment on the fuel situation, because not only warehouses were being hit in the past couple of weeks, but also refineries and fuel depots. And Elvira Nabiullina, the central bank governor, has said that the fuel spikes are spilling over into the broader economy.
Meanwhile, in Ukraine, at least 15 people have been killed and more than 100 injured by Russian strikes on multiple cities. Kiev and Slavyansk were struck by ballistic missiles and guided bombs. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says rescue efforts are ongoing. Russia's defense ministry says it hit a site in Kiev where Ukrainian and foreign drones were being made. Audrey McAlpine has more from the Ukrainian capital.
15 people killed across the country, 10 of them right here in the capital, Kyiv, in a somewhat irregular attack that took place this morning. You could hear the air alarms sounding, something in and of itself that's quite irregular. Usually Russian attacks are happening in the evening hours. But in this case, 10 ballistic missiles were launched into the capital, hitting what some local reports are saying was a military training grounds where there was a weapons exposition taking place. Now, we know, for example, that there were 10 killed, 100 people wounded, just really speaking to the scale of this attack. And I will tell you something else that was quite interesting. At the time, there was a thunderstorm happening here in Kyiv. So many people couldn't tell the difference between what was the sound of those missiles making impact and what was thunder, people standing on the streets looking up at the sky. But the prosecutor general's office here in Ukraine has now launched an investigation into how the details of this event could have been leaked. Under martial law right now, because of the war, it's forbidden to hold such mass gatherings without going through very strict and stringent security protocols. And while this isn't the first time that something like this has happened, last year, for example, an awards ceremony was targeted, but the details of this certainly will be coming out as the day progresses.
Romania says it shot down a drone breaching the country's airspace. The defense ministry says it happened near the town of Padina in the east of the country. Romania is a NATO member and shares a 650-kilometre border with Ukraine. Back in May, 2 people were injured when a drone crashed into an apartment building. In other news, leaders of India's youth-led Cockroach Janta Party have held talks with the government over a growing dispute that's sparked by national exam paper leaks. A spokesperson for the group says the negotiations will not stop nationwide protests. The talks come hours after activist Sonam Wangchuk ended a 26-day hunger strike. Tens of thousands of demonstrators demanding the resignation of the country's education minister. Siddharth Varadarajan is the founding editor of The Wire, an Indian digital news portal. He says there's no indication the primary demand of protesters are being met.
This is the second round of talks they've had, and this round ended pretty much like the first, where the representatives of the CJP stuck to their basic demand, which is that they want the education minister, Dharmendra Pradhan, to resign. And they had a couple of other demands, which the government said they were willing to look at positively, such as dropping false criminal cases filed against some of the youthful protesters, and also compensation for students who took their lives because of this botched-up exam. But on the fundamental issue of the resignation of this minister, there is no indication whatsoever that the government is considering their demand positively as of now. You know, Mr. Modi and his advisors pride themselves on being politically very savvy, but so far the manner in which they've handled this protest has really gone against their own interests, right? So you know, more and more people are getting drawn in. There's greater public anger and disaffection, and the use of force that we saw in Delhi, including the use of pellet guns against essentially unarmed peaceful protesters. This has angered and outraged a very, very broad section of people. So I think this has every possibility of snowballing into something major. You know, there probably will be some kind of a tactical reversal that the government would be able to accomplish. I don't foresee this current protest dragging on beyond, say, a week, 10 days.
Heavy rains continue to disrupt rescue efforts in Afghanistan a week after floods killed dozens of people. Al Jazeera spoke to one survivor who narrowly escaped death after a river burst its banks in Newshour province.
زما نوم زید کامران د خیر محمد زوی د نورستان ولسوالۍ وان اوسیدونکی یم او زه د نورستان مرکز کې اوسیږم زه دغه وظیفې نه راغلی وم چې لږ څه ختان جوړ کړم یا ځان پاک کړم حمام کوم سره راغلی وم هلته ناست وم ناڅاپه بس همداسې او سیلاب راغله او چې کله دلته خلکو چغې وواله چې لکه سیلابونه روان دي بار راوځئ وتښتئ ځان بچ کړئ سره او زه بهر ووتم دغه پولیس سره منډې وکړه همداسې سیلاب ورسېده او ډایرکټ زه دیوال باندې ویشتلم او بیا چې دی نه زما دغه خپې خوږ شو او همداسې چې دی که نه بس نور دغه سرونه او همداسې ملا او دا ټول دردونه ډېر دردونه راغله او ټپي شوي وم همداسې بس سیلاب ما ته ورسېده چې ورسېده نو بس همداسې تیز ووالم بس دیوال باندې ووالم او ما سره نور ملګری هم و هغه ډایرکټ ونیولم دغه لاس باندې ونیولم بس همداسې کش کړم همداسې بچ شوم الحمدلله شکر کله چې دا سیلاب چې راغله خو زما د زړه نه ډېره ګیره راغلې و ځکه چې بس همدغه شانته او ماشومان او مور او پلار او خور او ورونه همداسې هغو ډېر یاد شوي زما په زړه کې زما ذهن کې بس ولا به زه خو دنیا نه لاړم همداسې زما 100% یقین و.
Health authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo are appealing for more international support to contain what they describe as the fastest growing Ebola outbreak on record. More than 1,000 people have died from the disease. The World Health Organization warns the true number of infections could be up to 4 times higher than official figures. Cases have now been reported in 5 provinces, with Ituri remaining the epicenter, accounting for more than 90% of infections. Dr. Tieno Balde is the World Health Organization's incident manager for the outbreak. He spoke to us from Bunia in DRC about the factors driving this rapid spread.
The situation of this outbreak is extremely, challenging and extremely difficult. The pace of the outbreak is quite very fast, and this is due to many factors. First of all, probably this outbreak have started quite some time back ago, and the diffusion and the transmission has been happening. And with the increasing capacities of the testing, we are now discovering somehow the scope of this outbreak as we go. And obviously, there are different other factors here. The high level of mobility of the population, the naivety of the population, because it's the first time that these species of the outbreak is being kind of, detected, and also which has been, transmitted into this population in the Ituri province here. The other point also, Ituri is most of the localities which has been mostly affected by this outbreak are some mining areas, so with a lot of population movement, a lot of promiscuity somehow, and some kind of challenges in terms of demographic, in terms of social aspect. And the last point is also some of the challenges that we're having in terms of insecurity and limited access to some of the places for really performing the most relevant operational response actions.
Thousands of people escaping violence in the Central African Republic are living in overcrowded camps after renewed fighting along the border with Sudan. Families are being forced to move from one town to another in the northeast. The Central African Republic hosts more than 36,000 Sudanese refugees. Fighting between the Alliance for Patriotic Resurgence, the ASP, and the country's military has made life even more difficult for people there. Aid agencies warn many displaced families are living in dire conditions with little shelter or assistance.
It's because of the war that we are here. I am sick. Last year, it was the same insecurity. We fled, but it wasn't like it is today. We fled the war in a panic, leaving everything behind, our fields, our animals, and are living like animals. We have no tarpaulins to cover our tents. We're exposed to the rain. We are in misery.
It's thanks to this cloth that when it rains, I put it over the tents to cover it so the children don't get soaked. We don't even have any food. We fled with nothing. There are far too many cases of malaria. They keep promising they'll come today, tomorrow, and up to now, nothing. We're still waiting in these conditions.
The government has sent a lot of soldiers to Birao and to arm the folk. We're currently deploying them in the towns near the border with Sudan. Now we are advocating for humanitarian workers to be able to intervene in order to relieve the population.
Now, Europe is once again battling extreme heat, with wildfires forcing thousands of people to flee. Even the Mediterranean Sea is unusually warm. Everton Fox explains.
Well, this is Europe's third major spell of extreme heat so far this season, with temperatures once again well above average across parts of Spain, Portugal, France and Italy. And the prolonged heat has dried out vegetation, creating ideal conditions for wildfires. The biggest are burning in the southwest of France and central areas of Spain. And near Bordeaux, more than 18,800 people have been moved to safety as flames threatened homes and holiday camps, while Spain has declared a national emergency around Madrid and Avila. In fact, authorities issued evacuation orders for around 10,000 people in the Madrid area. Nearly 130,000 hectares have burned across the country since the start of the year, according to the European Forest Fire Information System. And across the European Union, around twice as much land has been burned by this stage of the year compared with the long-term average. And the heat isn't just on land, it's also affecting the sea. A marine heat wave now covers around 80% of the Mediterranean. Here's Corsica, Sardinia, the Balearics, the darker shading, showing where temperatures are particularly high, around 5 degrees Celsius in places. And that's putting extra stress on marine life and adding more heat and moisture into the atmosphere. Now, the heat is expected to continue across parts of southern Europe well into next week, keeping the risk of wildfires high. Scientists say Europe is the world's fastest warming continent, and as temperatures continue to rise, heat waves like these are becoming more frequent, more intense, and increasingly destructive.
Well, in France, heat waves are no longer solely a health and environmental challenge, but are also affecting the economy. Natasha Butler reports from a farm near Paris.
Scorched fields stretch to the horizon south of Paris, the result of recent heat waves that are damaging crops and livelihoods. So what are we looking at here?
We're looking at cabbages, and you see all these damages. All this was done by this little beetle.
And there are more of those beetles because of the heat waves?
There's at least 3 times more. These beetles, they like heat and sun, and we usually have them every year, but not as many as we have here. We think it's about half of the production, which will not be able to sell.
Florent Sebon runs this organic farm. Hotter summers are forcing him to spend more on irrigation and protection while harvesting less.
We're really angry because we're living that climate change within our bodies. The forest is burning next to here, and we're losing crops, and we're expecting that the society is going to change. We see that we could do lots of things to change, but we need government support.
As temperatures climb, businesses across the economy are seeing productivity fall, costs rise and fewer customers. The European Central Bank says frequent heat waves could affect growth for years.
When it gets extremely hot, people tend to change their habits. They might stay at home or avoid public transport, and they don't do some of their usual activities like eating out or just going shopping.
Fashion designer Pierre Talamont says shoppers stay away in sweltering weather. He says sales in his Paris boutique fell by nearly 1/3 last month.
We need to adapt to this climate upheaval, because we've had 4 consecutive hot summers and we see clearly the link between boutique sales and temperature trends. June and July were draining for consumers and business owners, so it's affecting the economy from both sides: consumer spending, retail sales and production.
Despite record temperatures in June, the French government cut funding for climate adaptation projects by 20% to save money. Critics say it's a dangerous backward step at a time when tackling what scientists call the climate emergency feels more urgent than ever. Natasha Butler, Al Jazeera, Paris.
The latest on the US-Iran war now, and US President Donald Trump says he doesn't think China and Russia are helping Iran in the conflict. In a post on Truth Social, he said Chinese President Xi Jinping had told him that he would not, under any circumstances, give or sell weapons to the Islamic Republic of Iran. He went on to say Russia's President Vladimir Putin has told him the same thing. But Trump finished his post by saying if either China or Russia did so, it would be very bad for them, certainly not in their best interests. Mike Hanna joins us live from the White House. Mike, this is quite a remarkable post, given that The CIA, the Defence Intelligence Agency, the Five Eyes intelligence community, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Mossad, all of them talk of a trilateral cooperation between Moscow, Beijing and Tehran. This post implies what exactly, from your perspective, Mike?
Well, very good question. Let's just try and parse this. He says directly that China has assured him that it will not sell weapons to Iran. He says directly that President Putin has done likewise. But he then adds something in relation to Ukraine, which does get a little bit confusing because it appears that he's making a defense without an accusation being made. He says that President Putin understands that he does not sell weapons to Ukraine, that being President Trump. He says that the US sells weapons to NATO, which then distributes them. He continues that I have no idea. So he doesn't know where the weapons are going to that are sold to NATO, which do end up in Ukraine. But the reason why he's saying all of this is to explain in a way, indirectly to President Putin, that it's good that he's not selling weapons to Iran because President Trump is not selling weapons to Ukraine. Because otherwise, in the Trump playbook, those two issues would create a friction. And then, of course, right at the end, he does pass that threat. He says, if they did, it would be very bad for them. So he is saying that, yep, they're not doing it, despite, as you mentioned, the thoughts of the intelligence communities that there is a lot of cooperation between those three capitals. But he insists that they're not. President Putin's told him they're not. The president of China has told him they're not, and he's reassuring President Putin that he is not selling arms to Ukraine, so just hopefully keeping the whole thing going. Very, very complicated post in a way, and also a confusing one given the current state of geopolitics and the balance of powers between Russia, China, the US, and indeed, stuck in the middle there, Iran.
Mike, as always, many thanks for that. Al Jazeera's Mike Hanna at the White House. Still ahead on Al Jazeera. In sport, one of club football's most successful coaches is now targeting international trophies.
A meeting of minds discussing the defining issues of our times.
In 1 year, we saw a step change. It became clear at that point that we really were in a kind of a new era of AI.
Nobel Peace Laureate Maria Ressa and Professor Michael Wooldridge explore the perils and possibilities of artificial intelligence.
It changes the way we think and then the way we act. How can we protect ourselves?
Studio B, the AI series on Al Jazeera.
They want to get clicks. They want to put it on social media.
The role of the media is supposed to be to hold the White House to account.
Most of U.S. media is owned by oligarchs.
The Iranian regime is tapping into something so universal.
What Israelis are allowed to see of this war, that is being tightly controlled.
You know that you're not getting the full picture. That tells you that it's something that the state doesn't want you to know about.
The Listening Post decodes the media on Al Jazeera.
The Chinese and Philippine Coast Guards have had another confrontation near a disputed reef in the South China Sea. The Philippines released footage showing a Chinese ship firing water cannon at a nearby vessel in the Scarborough Shoal. The third such incident this week happened as both countries met at a regional foreign ministers' summit in the Philippines. Al Jazeera's Barnaby Lowe is following the story from the ASEAN summit in Manila.
As foreign ministers of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, wrap up a week-long summit here in Manila, Philippine and Chinese maritime forces clashed for a third time this week in a disputed South China Sea. The Philippine Coast Guard said its vessels were subjected to a series of water cannon attacks and dangerous maneuvers by the Chinese Coast Guard in the Scarborough Shoal. Manila says it was conducting lawful activities in waters where it has sovereign rights. But Beijing said it exercised control measures against vessels that were intruding into its maritime territory.
The operations conducted on site were professional and compliant with standards, without any reproach. The Philippine side should stop provocations and hyping up the incident.
Now on Monday, a confrontation in another disputed area of the South China Sea ended with a Philippine Navy sailor sustaining a head injury. And on Thursday, a day after Philippine Foreign Affairs Secretary Teresa Lazaro and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi's bilateral meeting, Chinese Coast Guard vessels also directed water cannon at Philippine boats to drive them away. During their talk, both ministers reiterated their countries' respective positions. Wang criticized the Philippines for working with foreign actors. Lazaro condemned an AI-generated video by China Daily depicting Filipinos as monkeys and acknowledged confrontations at sea may affect negotiations for a code of conduct between Beijing and ASEAN.
Remember that the code of conduct is it's all in consonance with the 1982 UNCLOS, as well as no diminution of the rights of third parties, and it talks about the governance of the seas, the behavior in the seas.
Both Lazaro and Wang, however, agreed it's important for the Philippines and China to keep engaging with each other to try and find a middle ground. Barnabilo, Al Jazeera, Manila.
Now, one of the world's highest profile football coaches has a new job. Jurgen Klopp has been tasked with reviving the fortunes of Germany's national team. Andy Richardson reports.
All smiles on his arrival he might have been, but Jurgen Klopp was in combative mood on day one of his new job. His predecessor as Germany head coach, Julian Nagelsmann, had complained of media intrusion into his private life. Klopp issued this warning to the assembled press.
If you go out of line and don't leave my family alone, I'm out. Just to make that clear. Because I'm doing this job even though I've seen how you treat Julian in a situation where it should be all about sporting success.
In the last decade, success has been in short supply for the four-time world champions. Their last global title came in 2014. At the World Cups in 2018 and 2022, Germany exited in the group stage. And at this year's finals, Germany were beaten by Paraguay in the last 32. Klopp enjoyed huge success and popularity as a club manager, most recently with Liverpool, where he won the Premier League and Champions League titles.
Fantastic man manager. You've seen it for years at Liverpool. They don't get long together. You get probably 10 days, 12 days together. And then you've got to try and gel. He's one of the managers that you possibly could get the players gelling a lot quicker and playing the football that Germany needs.
Klopp's well-earned reputation for restoring failing spirits and winning trophies is about to receive its biggest test.
Ideally, this is the pinnacle of my career, my life, my professional life. I'm going to give it everything I've got, and I've put together the best coaching staff possible for myself.
Klopp says the last few days have felt like being in a movie. He and Germany will be hoping the Hollywood ending arrives at the next World Cup in 2030. Andy Richardson, Al Jazeera.
Don't forget, of course, much more on our website. There it is, including the latest on Iranian Gulf attacks across the region. Do stay with us here on Al Jazeera. The news continues in just a moment's time. I'll be back with you very soon. See you in a second.